I was hoping not to sit in the middle. Trade me. Oh. I love it. All right. So our first question is a two-parter. Could you give us a short overview of your program or your program model, and then talk to us about how students receive instruction?
Sure. So my name is Juanita Chan-Roden, and I'm the agent for science and career programs for Rialto Unified School District. And what that means is that we are a mid-sized California school district. We service about 24,000 students, TK-12 all the way up to 12th grade. And I help to support science, professional learning, and all of the academic supports that go along with that, as well as career technical education. And so our program is really designed for equity. So it's really designed recognizing we're a Title I district, 90% of our population is considered eligible for free and reduced lunch, 88% of our students are Hispanic Latinx, and then 8% are African American, so a majority minority community. And we have a commitment to ensure that all 24,000 students go to the garden multiple times annually. We have 19 elementary schools, and every single elementary school has a garden and a grove that's associated with it. Of our 5 middle schools, we have 2 middle schools that have gardens and groves. One of our middle school teachers is here. She runs a half-acre garden with her middle school kids. We created a new set of curriculum or middle school courses called Climate Resiliency that drive the kids out to the garden. And then our 3 comprehensive high schools, we have one that has a garden, we're working on it. The adult school campus has a garden, and also the continuation high school also has a garden. And so we have incorporated gardens through required common benchmark assessments in science. So that pushes the kids out there, it pushes all the teachers out there, all the way from TK-12 to 12th grade.
Alrighty, hello everyone. My name is Selma Sims. I'm the CEO and head grower of Gardeneers. We're located in Chicago, Illinois. Now, Gardeneers is the only full-service customized school gardening nonprofit in the city of Chicago. I usually tell city folks think FFA or 4-H. Now, we work with grades between kindergarten and 12th grade. We do in-school programming with grades K through 8, where one of the teachers will give us a subject such as science, art, music, whatever. They give us that class period for that week. With our high schoolers, 9th through 12th, we've collaborated with After School Matters, which is another Chicago-based nonprofit that was actually started by the late wife of one of our former mayors, right? And so in that program, after school, we have students that apply for the program. We accept them, and then we pay them either a stipend or an hourly wage to help us do the work. All right. Here's the thing, though. We only go to schools and communities that invite us. The administration has to come to us. We actually have an application on our website, gardeneers.org. All of our packages are there as well. If you look at our packages, that is a baseline for what that work costs, so you can know, because we have to pay our staff, just like Jennifer told us. Right? And so that's what we do. We've been doing that since 2014. We have 22 partners. 21 are school-based. 1 is a community organization, the Boys and Girls Club. You might have heard of them. And we, depending on the season, we serve anywhere between 1,400 to 1,700 students on a weekly basis. Our primary pillars are nature, nutrition, and the community, because all of those things are interrelated, and those pillars undergird all of our work.
Amazing. And we're with the School Garden Workshop, and we run a collaboration between Tucson Unified School District. And what happened was, back in the mid-2000s, there was kind of a wellspring of siloed kind of grassroots school gardens that got together, but pretty quickly outgrew our capacity to manage those gardens and partnered with the university, and we had some really great folks, visionary folks over there that created a school garden workshop class. And so we do ongoing, continuous dosages of professional development training for our teachers, and then we provide them with trained university students that have to do internships, and so that's how we do our stuff. The next question is, talk to me about your collaborators, your collaborations that make this happen.
So we have a whole bunch of collaborations. We're always down to start new collaborations. So for all of you out there that are interested in that and are in Southern California, we would love that. But I would think that we had to start from the inside. So in the Inland Empire, and actually I was having a conversation with a lady earlier at our table, we really don't have very many nonprofit organizations. So in the IE, that would cover a lot of San Bernardino and Riverside counties. In California, just by themselves, there are 6.5 million students. In the Inland Empire, there are about 900,000 students, and yet we have almost no nonprofits that are associated with that. There are maybe 5, and those 5 definitely don't have the capacity to support the number of students that we're trying to talk about. And so some of our key collaborators is like ourselves. In education services, so I work at the district office, and what a lot of people don't recognize is the dynamics that happen inside of a district. Very rarely does education services, the side that focuses on education, talk to the folks in business services. Business services would be the nutrition services folks, the grounds and maintenance folks, the facilities folks. And so we really started talking there. We are one of the only districts in the Inland Empire that does from scratch cooking. And so we worked with nutrition services because they have a separate budget to use our gardens to do local procurement. So that means that the students grow the produce, and then that produce is purchased at fair market value to be served in their cafeterias. And we started it a couple of different ways, but we had to really focus on like 2 crops, kind of thinking like farmers. Actually 3, oranges, so citrus, tomatoes, and cucumbers, just because of where we are. But they do fair market value, and that money flows back to the school gardens internally. We also have a ton of external partners. Some of those external partners, the California Department of Food and Agriculture, CDFA, shout out there. We had 2 farm-to-school innovation grants, innovator grants, that helped to support some of the startup capital pieces. And then, of course, nonprofit partner, philanthropic partners. We use our ELOP funding, so that's funding for extended learning opportunities programs, to help to fund some of the after-school things that we do. We put it in the LCAP, which is the Local Control Accountability Plan, so that it's a commitment from the district. We also worked with, our chief business officer who helps us to maintain like the hours basically of a garden support staff in grounds and maintenance.
Alrighty, so some of our major collaborators, I would say, let's start with the school district. We are a vendor with the Chicago Public School District, and so that's how we are able to do the work. I would say our second collaborator would be After School Matters, because they are a fellow nonprofit. So school district and other community-based organizations, or CBOs. So After School Matters, which I mentioned earlier, they will actually help fund the payment, Gesundheit, to our teens that come and do this program. But also, I was mentioning at my table earlier that our best collaborators are other CBOs, because not always can they give you something, but they're having conversations with folks, and they may speak to people that can't necessarily benefit them, but because they know what you're doing, what we're doing at Gardeneers, they can speak to the work that we're doing. They can literally be an advocate like we want our individual assets and our board members to be. They do it. They do it. And why is that important? Because we have, and we will talk about this later, as an organization, I believe in diversified funding. I believe in diversity in all aspects of life. However, when it comes to funding, those relationships with other CBOs have brought us up, and funders have found us. There's a lot of money out there, a lot of funding, reframe, a lot of funding out there that a lot of us do not know exists because they have not approached you, because they don't know about your work, because no one has spoken up for you. You cannot be in every room, but your work can. And that's based off who knows what you're doing. And so collaborating, like for instance, Open Lands is here this year. Shout out to Danielle. We work with Open Lands in several collaborations. And so just like I mentioned them, they would mention us. And that's important to this work. The on-the-ground work as well, because I started as a garden educator, but now as CEO, that is important. Making sure everyone in your community that conventionally would have been perceived as your competition, let me tell you, they're not. They're your accomplices or your collaborators. They're not your competition. Those collaborators, those relationships have been like the most important to the work from my standpoint as a leader for the last 3 years.
Amazing. For us, I think we've done a really good job infiltrating big institutions, getting good buy-in from the school district, getting good buy-in from the university. But I feel like at this point in our program, the collaborators that we're most interested are those folks in the communities that we work in. We're a part of these big institutions, but we don't want our program to feel and look like those institutions. We want our program to be a mirror that reflects the people that we work with. And so now it's like the collaborators that we're after are the grandparents and uncles and aunts and the students and their families that we work with. And so how can we use our program to amplify those voices and to give the students an experience where they see themselves and their families in the work that we do. So those are the collaborators that are kind of a priority for us right now. All right, so let's talk about funding. So how do y'all fund your stuff?
So we kind of talked about it a little bit. The CDFA Farm to School Innovator Grants allowed us additional flexibility to really start something. So in districts, I think the biggest challenge is that startup capital. And there has to be a certain what's in it for me factor for the district. So we have been working strategically to drive the what's in it for me and relating it to curriculum and academic achievement, right? So just like the young lady that was talking about the garden survey, it's really important that you tie it to different curriculum, like different academic standards. So the one set of academic standards that we've tied it very closely to is science funding, and that's how we got it into the local control accountability plan for the district. In addition, we tie it to ideas around food insecurity, right? That's how we linked it with nutrition services. We tie it to ideas around public health. And so when I do certain things that are related to the public health aspects of it, I can even connect it to career technical education. And there's so much funding for career technical education. It's a ridiculous amount of funding around CTE that I can use my CTIG funding, which is the Career Technical Incentive Grant, depending on what it is that I'm doing. I can use Perkins funding, depending on what it is that I'm doing. As I'm doing stuff after school, I can connect it to those extended learning opportunities programs, so those ELOP funds that are all within the district. And then we're always constantly looking for those philanthropic partners. And what I find from all of our local nonprofits is that while they might not be able to do a lot of monetary kind of funding, they can provide a lot of in-kind contributions, and those in-kind contributions can be just as valuable for a district as actual dollars and cents. And so really building those relationships between those internal partners as well as the external partners, and thinking about funding in a really creative way and all the different opportunities that, that your community affords you. But if a district wants to make this happen, they can. So I just want to say that again. If a district wants to make this happen, they can. But you have to talk to the right people in the right places. So those political allies, while we think gardens aren't political, guess what? At school, everything's political. So your garden allies would be your school board members, anybody in education services, all those chief business officers. We don't have directors, we have agents, and so those would be people in positions like mine in surrounding areas. And that funding can come from both you and, what most importantly, if you've got a school garden, it should come from the school. You can put it in the SIPSA plan. You can put it in. All these different locations. So I just want to point those things out.
Thank you. All righty. So as a nonprofit, we also fund our programs in many different ways. I mentioned previously that if you go to our website, again, gardeners.org, I believe in a shameless plug, you can see our package prices, right? So about that, every school we serve cannot pay that package price. However, you have to put a value on your work. Put a value on your work. Now, with that, the schools understand the value we have put on our work, so one, they take us seriously. Because that's a thing. I know you all know it. That's why folks don't want to pay someone to be in the garden, right? So once you have a value for your work, the school says, hey, we want your program, but we only have, let's say, $1,000. It is my job to make it enough. How do I do that? So one, we have government grants. I'm a crop scientist by trade. I went to Iowa State, go Cyclones. I saw a Hawkeye in here, it's cool, still love you. But I was trained as a conventional farmer. So I know that the United States Department of Agriculture has the money, second to only defense. They have the second largest budget, and we know what defense is doing right now. So they have the money, and I want it. So. Right. I know you got it. I want it. So we have multiple USDA grants, whether it's specialty crop block, farm to school, we have those different grants. We also utilize the AmeriCorps service system. I saw some food corps folks in here. Yeah. That is a government grant. That's a government grant that allows us to compensate folks on our team to do this work, to train them to do this work, because we do train them. I am a big advocate of professional development. Your brand is only as good as I don't want to say the weakest, but the person that requires the most energy on your team, and there's no one weak on my team. I'll say it, right. So understanding that the government helps us fund that, but also in the state of Illinois, we have other types of ways to fund money. So our work is done primarily on the south and west sides of the city of Chicago, and if you're not familiar with the city of Chicago, the south and west sides are the areas that were systemically and systematically underserved and under-resourced ever since the New Deal era. We actually had, in both those areas, 2 major interstates bisect our neighborhoods, which caused the ethnic shifting or flight of a lot of people. And resources were never poured back in. Then, of course, we had that war on drugs, right? And because of that, the state of Illinois, once the state of Illinois legalized marijuana, we have some of the highest taxes on recreational weed in the country. It's 34%. My organization and a whole host of other organizations that fall in the buckets, we get a portion of that. Because where we served was disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs. So that is a way that our governor, shout out to Governor J.B. Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, they figured out a way, their administration figured out a way to take a bad and pour into a good. There's several different buckets. We fall under violence prevention and public health. But there's also those buckets for returning citizens, those for just straight violence. There's so many different buckets for your state to fund you. We also got funding from the Illinois Treasurer, right? I met him at Agriculture Day at the State Fair. Go to those places. And if you know Illinois, south of I-80, it gets real cornfield. It's full of corn and beans, but that's where it is. We also receive service fees. Like I said, they're small, but they matter. But let's get to what really matters. Funding from private folks, right? So we receive private funding from family foundations as well, right? Now, not a lot, but a fair amount of family foundations, you will not know they exist because they don't want you to know that they exist. Because as I was told by one, and I won't tell you his name, he doesn't want everybody calling him to ask for money. So what they do is they'll create a co-op or a collaborative. They'll rename it, and you need to find out about it. You want to know how you find out about it? Your colleagues. They're talking about it. They got an email, maybe they spoke to their board member, or their volunteers who work for this other foundation heard about it from this person, but they don't qualify, and they thought, you did. Oh, we do. Let me get that to my grant writing team, because I don't write grants personally. I'm a farmer. I'm a farmer. But I do outsource my grant writing. It's a pretty penny, but that team pays for themselves over and over and over again. And I know a lot of folks don't have that. I will say I'm privileged enough as a leader to have a grant writing team. But it is my job to get them those grants, and it's my job to make sure that I'm meeting the right people so that they can say, hey, we would like a letter of interest from you for a project. Because you know the LOIs have to come first. But the way I'm able to do that, like here, I'm in this room with every single one of you talking about the work that we do in Chicago on the south and the west sides. And some of you are probably going to talk about our work where you're at. I know, because a relationship I started 2 years ago at this very same conference, because I had a conversation with somebody, that conversation led to us being introduced to the Obama Foundation. We got a check from them too. So, and I'm hoping to work more with them, but they also funded our work. And that was because of several conversations, and that person knows who they are. I actually thanked them when I saw them again. But the conversations you have in rooms like this will help get you funding. But people have to know what you're doing. They have to know that you like doing it, and you got to prove that you're good at it. And so once you put all those things together, you can do that. Last, individual donors. I think we discount the grandma who can give you $10 a month for the rest of her life because we're too busy trying to go after that family foundation that you don't know exists. If you can get 10 to 20 people in a community to give you money, $5, $10 a month for 20 to 30 years, do the math. Think about that for several sites. Now, that's one way. Another way to get funding from individual donors, let's be real. We have to think about what currency is. Currency isn't always cash. I'm personally trying to be written into someone's will. If you just seen the Chewy commercial where the cat got the beach house, I'm trying to be the cat. At the same time, that's just not happening on accident. I make sure I steward relationships so that our individual donors think about us and the legacy that they would like to leave behind, right? So thinking about that, we take crypto, I take Bitcoin, I take qualified charitable gifts. I'll take your house if you give it to me. Because I want to fund this work for the kids in my community And like this, I think it was the late Mother Teresa said it, no margin, no mission. And I refuse to turn a school away because they can't pay. So that's what it is.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. Yeah, a couple of things. Like Juanita was saying, like the what's in it for me factor. I think about that's the success we've had with Tucson Unified and with University of Arizona. Nobody wants more work. Figure out what work they need, how you can bring value to what they do. The district does tons of professional development. The teachers are required to go. Teachers hate it. We come in and we provide professional development that they like. We keep metrics on that so we can report metrics back. Makes the district look good, so they fund into us. Same with the district food services department. Nobody likes school food. Everybody knows that there's a problem with school food, and so we come in and do garden to cafeteria, and because of that, we're in their budget. The donor stuff, the individual donor stuff, yeah, for sure. Individual donors, family foundations, that's our best money. We write grants, but real talk, like, I hate writing grants. I hate executing grants, and it's like, do I want a bunch of shallow wells or do I want some deep wells? Those grants sometimes turn into shallow wells. It's like I'm coming up with new projects to get a grant, and then only a portion of that grant funds what I really need, and the rest is like extra work. We're doing something that the grant funder wants. I think the business community partnerships, shout out Sprouts, is really important. There's a handful of people in our community. We've got a family of restaurants that supports us, and they hustle for us. They're politically connected. That stuff helps. The individual donors, we set a goal that we want to do monthly garden tours for 6 to 10 people, and really we're prospecting donors on those tours. And it was hard to get a few months, but we finish every tour with, hey, if there's people in your circle that are interested in this work, that would enjoy this tour, help us populate this next tour, and then it's just like dominoes. And now we're doing multiple tours a month, and that's where our individual donors come from.
You know what, as you were speaking, I forgot 2 additional funding sources.
Yeah, hit me.
One of them was all the WaterWise grants. So again, going back, while people in education services only know about certain grants, nutrition services and grounds knows about a whole different side of grants. So I know Rainbird with all of our irrigation systems, again with those in-kind contributions. And then we also we're building a 1.5 acre international healing garden, 2 acre international healing garden. And the money from that came from our county supervisor. And so going back, it wasn't necessarily a grant, but I did write it. It was just a long a list of reasons why it would be supportive of the governor's initiatives, of water initiatives. So going back to, what does your state care about? Link up what your state really cares about to the work here. If you're a garden advocate, you are a food security advocate. If you're a garden advocate, you're a climate advocate. If you're a garden advocate, you are a public health advocate. And so just remembering all those things, all of your local assembly people, county supervisor people, those are things that they care about too.
Can I piggyback off that? Yeah, this is new for us, but that same family of restaurants person is like best buds with one of our Congress people. And so he's screenshotting me texts to this congressman saying, hey, I want some appropriations money for this program. And they gave me a list of funded appropriations projects. They were like $800K to like 3.5, and there was like 20 of those. And there's money out there that we don't even, I don't even understand those numbers that are out there. And I don't know that we'll get that this round, but I'm emailing staffers that are excited about our projects, and they're gonna get the Congress folks on garden tours. And maybe it doesn't happen this round, but next round we'll know. We'll do our groundwork. We've got a year, but that's really big money for us. But that's, yeah, big stuff. All right, final question. What's the secret sauce? What makes your stuff work?
I would say the secret sauce is just relationships, and that hustle spirit. You have to have that hustle spirit no matter whether you work for a district or when you're with a nonprofit or when you're with a for-profit. A lot of it is just recognizing how to speak with other people, how to connect with other people, how to figure out what drives them. So when you're talking about teachers, all those teachers in order for this to work, we're talking about really working with thousands of teachers. And as much as you want to say that all those teachers are like really in it, they're not. So it's like, okay, but there is something you're in, right? So maybe gardens isn't your thing. Maybe your thing is birds. Maybe your thing is insects. And what that really requires is for you to use another side of your listening brain. Like, listen to what they're saying. Oh no, I'm not really into that. I only step out in the garden to get herbs for my kitchen. You're like, bing, your kitchen? Well, let me tell you, we got a project for you. So it's just listening to people and what drives them and figuring out how to derive professional learning after you've kind of done your informal surveys, just listening around and thinking about, okay, so I can run a PD on this and then more people will show up. So really thinking about listening and building relationships.
I second all of that. I will second all of that and say, your collaborations. We collaborate with a lot of folks, right? So I was asked, how do you all build community in Chicago? It's because we all work together and we're all in the same meetings. And if you don't work for me, you probably work for somebody else who we already work with, right? And so those collaborations and those relationships, but I'm gonna take it back to relationships. You gotta pay your people equitably. My secret sauce, is we pay really well. Definitely given what we do. Now, we're not balling. This suit is from ASOS. It's just tailored. So I learned that years ago from a guy at Barney's. Just get it off the rack and get it tailored. It'll look expensive. It's not. $30, y'all. However, you have to pay people equitably. And I know you're like, Selma, how do I do that? You have to make sure people know what your work is worth. That may mean telling some folks no, but you just gotta do it. You gotta do it because they don't know your worth. If they don't know your brand's worth, your organization's worth, they're definitely not gonna value your people. And as a leader, if a school does not value my people, that means they may leave, and I can't afford to lose the intellectual property that garden educator has. Now, when I say that, right, it's not just the ability to garden as well as educate, because our garden educators do both. They have to maintain that garden as well as facilitate that education. They are also community builders within our schools. Our garden educators go back to the same school every year unless they get a new job. And if they get a new job, that job's paying way better than me. And it's hard to do that in Chicago. So making sure you are looking out for all your relationships, but not just the external ones like the funders and the people you work with. It's the internal people you work with as well. And I know that's hard to do in this particular industry, but it's doable. It's doable. It is one of the reasons why I have a really great retention rate for employees and AmeriCorps. That's hard. This working in garden education is almost like working in a restaurant. You kind of expect that turnover. We don't. I've had people that have been on our team since I've been there. I got to Gardeneers in 2018. But they only stayed, yes, they love the work, but the love of the work does not pay ComEd. That's our light company. The love of the work doesn't pay T-Mobile, and it definitely won't pay your landlord. And if people are miserable outside of work, they show up to work just like that. And my work is with the youth on the south and the west sides. You will not present to our youth like that. But as a leader, that's my job to make sure they don't. So making sure I could pay people equitably, adequately to do this work, knowing that the workers, our workers, including myself, we all have specialized skills. Everybody in here that does garden education, you have a specialized set of skills, and I know that's a quote from a movie, but it's true. is true, and you need to be compensated as such. That's our secret sauce. That's why funding is super duper important to me. Somewhere between 85, it could be anywhere between 80 and 87% of our overall expenditures are people for program. I could make $1 stretch. I know a wheelbarrow's $150, but I can get one for less than that if you know I'm nice. But I can't skip on paying my staff or my team. I can't. I refuse. If you do that, once you get there, because you will get there, you will. I'm going to speak it on for you. But once you get there, you got to remember what got you there. Okay? Make sure you are compensating and taking care of your team, because you would not be where you are or where you want to go without them.
When I think about secret sauce, I feel like I can't talk about secret sauce without saying this work is messy and hard. And there's nothing, I haven't figured out anything that makes it not messy and not hard. But my team is amazing. You learn who the people are that do the amazing work, that are mission driven, and you do everything you can to hold on to that team. So I know that much. I think that's all I'm going to say. All right, I think at this point we're going to open it up for some questions on the panel. And so if you shout your questions at me, I'll relay them to the panel. So questions out there? Yes. Heck yeah. Amazing. Yes, that person's a hero.
Did you say Fawcett? Yeah, Fawcett, that's the team.
Yes. Oh, so what do you do to encourage individual donors to keep giving?
So, again, we just focus on those relationship pieces, make sure that we give them, clearly communicate with them about all the great things that have happened, and so they get their updates, they see the pictures, stuff like that. That's what we do.
Okay, cool. So let's get in the weeds. Relationships, but every relationship isn't the same. So one, I will tell you in terms of individual donors, hopefully you have some form of communication with them. Maybe it's your email newsletter, right? Sam taught us how to write one 2 years ago. Maybe it's your email newsletter. If you have a proper platform like MailChimp, we can send emails from Bloomerang because that's our CRM system. We're not sponsored. I hope to be one day. You can see who's opening what email. From who's opening what email and who's engaging in what content, you then need to segment your donors. Because the person that wants to come out and do the dirty work, don't ask them for $5,000. And the person who can give $5,000, I'm just throwing out a number, they may not be that person that wants to go and get chased by a chicken. So understanding that these different types of folks, not to throw people in a pile, but we will usher them into a room. You have to steward those relationships like that and communicate with them. But check it out. A lot of nonprofits will sit here and get a donation from somebody and they will never talk to them again. You get that $200, thank you. No, yes, thank you very much. Figure out your system on how you're thanking or at least acknowledging gifts. But then you should still keep reaching out to that person. I'm not saying call them like your grandma, but you should be reaching out to them. Because if you gave someone $200, wouldn't you want them to kind of just reach out to you? Donors are humans too, most of them. But yeah, that's how you keep them engaged. And believe it or not, you can re-engage lapsed donors if you beef up your consistent communication with individual donors. Segmentation and relationships.
Just to add to that, when we talk to donors, and it doesn't even matter how much money they give, and I say this from my heart, like my work is your work. Like you make this possible, and we're your hands. And I think also we talk to people about legacy. One of y'all said legacy is like, I want this work to be your legacy. And I think that that's how you steward donors. And I think that's how you go from low-level gifts to high-level gifts to estate gifts. The other thing we do community work projects all the time. We invite our donors. We have a donor list, and they're invited to all of our community work project days. And there's maybe only a handful that come, but the handful that do come, and it's rewarding for them, we steward donors that way too. And we have time for one more question.
And real quick,
go.
just to piggyback. So say it's like a handful that come. Those handful will tell 3 other people about your work.
Rich people. Rich people know rich people.
Right? They do know people. They know people. But you always want advocates. Because just because someone can't write you a check doesn't mean they don't know somebody that can write you a check, or they don't know somebody that can write you a check. Or even, it's not even about a check. Sometimes I just need some people to come and weed. Oh, you got 4 friends that'll come and weed, and Lagunitas just donated all of this beer? We could definitely weed at this community garden. I got a grill. I can get them to donate us some meat, and I have seasoning in my office. Let's go harvest some peppers. Let's make it a work day like Shawshank, right? You want to create those experiences, and that's how.
We can't do that at schools.
Oh, no, so you can't do that at schools. We also have a couple of community sites, right? Y'all should come to Chicago. We have a farm that's atop an old railway line that used to be attached to the Sears and Roebuck factory. I'll leave that there.
All right, we've got time for one more question. I see some. How about all the way in the back?
I can hear you a little bit.
Yeah, I'll repeat it. So, garden to cafeteria model. Question for Juanita.
Thank you so much for asking that, because we still haven't gotten it all figured out, but we are working on it. And so at first, when the gardens first started, that's what we told the schools, that they had autonomy. Just grow whatever you want in the nutrition services. And what you find is like, okay, you got 5 peppers. The cafeteria can't do anything with 5 peppers. Like, nobody is doing anything. So we had to think about which crops were the most productive for our particular area, and that's how we settled on those 3, right? So we have a history of citrus in our particular region, and the citrus the kids like. And so we worked with grounds. Brian's right over there. He has a whole set of materials that he's willing to pass out to everybody that goes along with these citrus groves. The trees, once they were planted, they just give. Annually, they just give. And so what we do is we organize specific days between grounds and nutrition services so that once the kids recognize that the fruit is ready to be harvested, then boom, they set up a day, they put it into the computer basically, nutrition services comes out and they drop off the apparatus. The kids and the teachers pick the citrus, and then the citrus, under normal circumstances, so in normal years, they pick up the citrus, they weigh it, and then it gets processed at the central kitchen and it gets pushed out to all the school sites. So in order for this to work, you really have to have high yield crops. So the other high yield crop that we found a lot of success with was tomatoes. And so nutrition services said, hey, we can use tomatoes in lots of things, spaghetti sauce, salsas, all these different things. So the tomatoes are the second kind of fruit that the kids work on, and the third one was cucumbers, because we're also working on they're high yield crops. They grow well in our area, but the procurement cycle works basically the same. So in between nutrition services and the classrooms, the collaboration that happens is that the students plant, and then the students tend the gardens, and then when the fruit is ready and available, the nutrition services comes out. They do the picking up, they do the washing, the weighing, they take it to the central kitchen, they cook whatever it is. So depending on what season it is, then the meals are slightly different. But we leave that all up to nutrition services. And then what the school gets afterwards is a check. And going back to the communication piece, nutrition services has a great, so somebody was talking about Fawcett over there. We love Fawcett, and Miss Christina, who is her, I can't remember what her title is, but basically she does all the social media outreach and stuff. So when the kids are picking, they oftentimes go to the school site, they record the kids have little interviews, impromptu, they do Facebook Live so that the community can see. Over COVID, we also did, I would go out there and we would do science in the garden, so little updates about what was happening, but we call it the Cafeteria Classroom Community Connection. And so the principals sign procurement agreements with nutrition services, so not every site does it, but we have a vast majority of the sites that allow for that. And so as we're moving forward, this year we had a catch in the giddy-up. So we have the Oriental fruit fly, and we're under quarantine for the Oriental fruit fly for the citrus industry. So we had to work with grounds to figure out, so we worked with Brian, what are the regulations that are coming out from USDA? Well, the fruit is still available and ready to eat, but it can't leave the site. So we worked with nutrition services. When the school sites are doing the picking on that particular day, we can no longer transfer it to the central kitchen. So we have to do the processing of the fruit on the site. But even with that, they pull out their stuff, they take it to the site, and so we've worked through that. And so there's always like a little catch in the giddy-up, but if you have a team and you're really working collaboratively with your team, you can work through that.
And real quick, because this is amazing. Yep, clap it up, because that deserves that. So remember I told y'all it's about knowing who's doing what and where. In the Midwest, Wendy and Cheyenne from Michigan is doing something like that. I know because my director of partnerships, Paris, and I drove up there, and we went and visited Wendy, and she welcomed us, and she took us to several different sites, and one of their schools does exactly this. And they do grow peppers. So they do. And it's a great system. There's a whole team of folks there. They're able to employ people from the community. And it's Detroit. And so Juanita's going to get overwhelmed by y'all questions later on how she does this. But just in case you can't get to Juanita, holler at Wendy and Cheyenne in Michigan. Go ahead. Yep, right there. She's raising her hand. The exact same thing. And I think it's funded through Michigan's, USDA and Michigan's school program. I'm not really good with all the remembrance, but I know what everybody does where I'm at. So holler at Wendy and Juanita.
Can I add one more thing? And then Stacy is here also. We're piloting right now, so this last season was kind of a weird season with the atmospheric rivers in California, and so the price of lettuce went up a whole bunch. And so what Nutrition Services said was, hey, maybe we can pilot, we have these Fork Farms hydroponics units, not at all the schools, but just at her school, which is the middle school. So we're also piloting that so that all of the lettuce that they're doing can also be used in the salad bar. And the goal is that at every school, there would be multiple units of hydroponics. I don't want to multiple hydroponics units, because every 30 days you get a huge harvest. And so again, going back, lettuce becomes a thing. And the new thing that we're also talking about is radishes, because going back to the nutrition services workers work so hard to change that perception that the cafeteria food isn't good. Our cafeteria food is actually really good, and we have a panel of students that works with nutrition services to give feedback about the food constantly. So one of the pieces is we have a pozole that the kids really like. And so in addition to the lemons that we used to not be able to do, we're able to now sell back the lemons. And then they're also encouraging the schools to to grow radishes, because they're also another fast growing crop. And those radishes, they slice up for the little bag that they add with the pozole.
Yeah, unbelievable. So, all right, give it up for our panelists, Juanita and Selma. Thank you.